Hello and welcome to Visible Voices. The Visible Project is a Leeds-based initiative aimed at improving the outcomes of adults that have experienced any form of child sexual abuse. The Visible Project is made up of two equally important groups. The Strategic Steering Group, which consists of both statutory and voluntary organisations within Leeds, and the Visible Leadership Reference Group. This podcast is by Visible Leadership Reference Group that consists of people who have experienced any form of child sexual abuse, otherwise known as CSA survivors. Names may or may not be used throughout this series. In this episode, we're speaking with the Visible Reference Group about experiences of accessing mental health services and dealing with mental health professionals. This discussion highlights examples of best practice.
I think for me, in my mental health, it was not only exposing or disclosing to a psychoanalyst, it was also the fact that I had counselling at several different stages through my life for different durations that did different things.
So could I ask you such a broad question of how has your experience in childhood impacted on your mental health as an adult? And then you could explain the different stages and the different ways it's impacted you.
Right. Yep. Impacted on your adult self. It's also, how has that changed throughout your life? So, for example, how has your experience impacted on your adult self?
I would definitely be able to say that I've got two, clearly before therapy and after therapy.
Mm-hmm. I think I would probably say before childbirth and
Really?
Yeah, if I'm honest. But I think also because I had counselling at different, like I said, at different phases and for different stages of my trauma, it meant that I was able to look into certain aspects of my trauma that the counsellors sort of led me to. So at one stage, I had a counsellor who was all about the Freudian thing of, everything is about, linked back to your father or your. So he was really intent on asking me question after question about my father. And I was like, what's this got to do? It's not my father that's the abuser. What's this got to do with what's happened to me? Why did you keep on asking me this? I couldn't get his.
Remind me what age you were when you told me you were older, a teenage, weren't you?
No, I was 9 till 15, 16.
I knew there were some teens in it. How did it impact you when your daughter hit that age? Did it impact you when you thought suddenly she's at that age when these things started happening for me? Did it have any impact?
I think yes and no. I think it was a very different generation back then for me, because it was that generation where you didn't talk to your parents about anything, not even periods, anything. Whereas now, me and my daughter are very open, so we have a very different relationship than I did with my mum. And that's not a negative thing. It's just, how generations are.
And was that intentional on your part? I'm not going to let this happen. I'm not going to let this happen.
Very much so. I didn't want any secrets. I wanted to age appropriately. I wanted her to be exposed to information that was appropriate for her age. So if she was interested in periods or looking up in the book about it or asking questions, then we'd sit and really take the questions apart and do it over several nights. Or say, do you remember that thing you said earlier on about how do you put a sanitary pad on? Do you want to go and practice it? See if you can wear one for the day at school or something. So it's sort of, you're following it through in a long time. But as a teenager gets older, she's now 12, and for example, she went to a party on Saturday night. Now I know the parents who were at the party. There was older children there. So afterwards, I was like, so how did it go? And she was too tired to respond. And that to me is like, do I need to be worried about something here? But then I thought, no, she's too tired at the moment. I need to wait till during the week and slip it in when we're talking about, we're sitting around a table
So was
eating
that your
dinner.
automatic response? She's tired, something's gone wrong, something's happened, that like alertness sort of thing.
And I'm sure any mother would have that. But I suppose the thing that is different is that we are sharing about sexual issues, and she's telling me honestly things about her mates that shock the living daylights out of me. But obviously, I'm not walking away going, "Ugh, it's disgusting." I'm sort of listening to it and vaping. Yeah, we had a long conversation. So it's just about transparency, isn't it?
Does
And
she know
communication.
about your history?
She does by accident. Yeah.
If it hadn't have come out by accident, would you have?
No,
shared?
not at this age. I would have protected her innocence a little bit further. And she doesn't fully know who or what. She just knows I've been raped, she calls it. Which sounds like it's a one-off incident, in the street with someone you don't know, which it wasn't. In terms of mental health, it's the amount of things, particularly in my 20s, I think were really difficult. A lot of self-harming, cutting, a lot of despair, overwhelm, comparing, like you said, imposter syndrome, and sort of, feeling inferior to others around you, not being able to sort of have the confidence to be able to carry on.
And did you know that it was linked with what happened to you when you were younger?
Yeah, I did. Definitely.
You were fully aware that this is what the impact it was having on you. This was the legacy that you'd been sort of like given.
Well, that's the trouble. It was very hard fully to say, oh, it's directly related to that. In hindsight, it's a lot easier, 10, 20 years.
But during that
time, I was not understanding or joining the dots. And I think, and again, it's the focus on the current health issue that is so intense that the trauma linked to it is not considered.
So the help that you had at the time, was it very much diagnosis and label led? Let's sort out the self-harming, let's sort out your eating issues, or was there that holistic support around looking at you as a whole person, of what's led you to like that?
No, it was fully directional, dependent on what was in front of them. I was really accident prone, but a lot of it was cry for help. So I'd sort of have accidents. They were accidents. I didn't injure myself on purpose. And it wasn't really Munchausen syndrome, but I would have, I'd do kamikaze somersaults off my bike intentionally, and I sometimes look back and think, was that just a cry for help to get, to be able to disclose to someone, a professional? How about you?
I'm getting that. Somebody said it in relation to what you just said, and I don't like the word, but because people use it wrongly and see it as a negative thing. But attention seeking, as in somebody to pay attention to you, to explore it with you, because you're not right, but you don't know why or how or whatever. You just want somebody to pay attention to you.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
Seen as a thing, as a negative thing, as a horrible thing that nobody wants to do, but it's that attention in that. So you wanted somebody to invest in you and be bothered about you to find out what is wrong with you.
Yeah. And it's so, at the time, what happens in the now, sometimes you're in crisis mode. So you can't think until you reflect back, and only then can you go, oh, right, okay, I'll get it. And I think that's the difficult thing. All the traumas that people have in their everyday life, you don't always reflect back on. The way that I'm reacting or responding to this is different because of what I've experienced in my past. And it's usually a reactionary sort of, you're putting a barrier up. You're not letting people in. You're trying to control the situation as much as you can. And that usually means either suppression or hiding, masking your own emotions, which leads to mental health issues. And if it doesn't lead to mental health issues, it will lead to stomach aches.
Yeah.
Autoimmune concerns. If you suppress something for so long, it's like the picture of one of my counsellors used to say, imagine your emotions being a beach ball in the water and you're pushing it under the water. Well, eventually that's got to come back up.
Well, I did a school assembly a couple of weeks ago, and it was at a primary school, so they were very young. And obviously you don't use terms like self-harm and don't use terms like eating disorder. But I was talking about how you could manage what you feel inside and your thoughts different ways. Some are healthy and some are not very healthy and that kind of thing. And I had this little prop that I made. And so to say about the thoughts that go around in his mind, I had one of those windmills, that you put on a sandcastle, going round. And sometimes the thoughts in your mind can be going round really, really fast that you can't concentrate on them and you can't think straight and this, that, and other. And for the feelings in the body, I used a bottle of pop.
Yeah, it's that.
And check it and say, sometimes you don't know why you're feeling like this. You don't know where it's come from. You don't understand it, but you're feeling there's so much going on inside. You feel as if you're going to burst and it's an uncomfortable feeling and you don't like it. And we've got to learn techniques to calm it down and to calm the liquid in the bottle down before we explode. And it was that kind of thing. And like when I was young, I felt aggressive and I felt violent and I felt angry but I didn't know why. So I just put it down to me, that there's something wrong with me. I didn't know where it had come from or why I was like that. So, and I managed my feelings by being very aggressive or being compliant and passive. I went from one extreme to the other depending on who I was around. As an adult, my mental health difficulties were seen as mental health diagnoses. You've got this label, we treat this one. You've got these 3 labels. Which one's the most significant one at the moment? Which one's presenting the most dangers? Right, it's this one, so we'll deal with that. Then when it swaps round, your eating disorder, that's more life-threatening because I went to 4 stone. When I was 20, right, we need to deal with that now. Let's forget about the depression and the OCD. We need to concentrate on the eating disorder. So for a good 10 years within the mental health system, it was all based on diagnoses and how I presented and dealing with those. So for depression, it was with tablets. For eating disorder, it was being refed and those kind of things. OCD, that never got to the top of the list, so that were never looked at. And so it wasn't exploring why. It was just saying, you've got these issues, let's do something to deal with them. It wasn't till 10 years in and me saying I'm fed up of learning how to cope that I asked for psychotherapy. And it was then when all the understanding and the reasons why came out.
It sounds like a clear line between before therapy.
Yeah. And therapy, it didn't stop my issues. If anything, it gave me more difficulties because I'd learned that I'd been sexually abused as a child and I'd learned that all these things were linked with it. And I looked and I found out that I did lots of other things which I thought were normal, which were my ways of coping, but actually there might have been harmful behaviours and that kind of thing. But for me, it was just normal to get into a scalding hot bath. But then I learned it's a way because I don't like being without any clothes. And if I have to be in the water with no clothes on, I need to be harming myself and those kind of things. So I learned that I had more problems through therapy than before, but it was real. And I was having it rather than just putting, it's me, I'm stupid. I've got mental health issues. I'm mental. I'm just messing around with my food. I'm just horrible. I am. I don't know why I'm get really angry. It gave me an explanation, gave me some understanding, and I'm learning to be understanding with myself and not as harsh and as critical on myself and understanding why I am. But yeah, I've ended up with more problems because I'm looking at myself more rather than just thinking of myself as somebody with this diagnosis.
The talking therapy has helped us work out where we're at now and how we're going to go forward, because it's never going to be easy.
I think it's given understanding. It hasn't, I think psychotherapy doesn't solve your problems. It helps you understand why they're there in the first place.
There's an acknowledgement, and there is also accountability, isn't there? And, acknowledging what's happened is great, and being given tools and the confidence to share that with others in the appropriate time and setting. But most importantly as well, it's holding that person accountable for this part of your life or that part of your life or how you do this. And it goes back down to the trauma. The hardest thing for us always is separating what is our personality and what is due directly to the trauma, which came first, chicken and the egg, because the trauma happened early in childhood.
It's that time when your personality is developing, physically you're developing, your brain's still developing. So it can't be separated from your personality because it shapes your personality. It shapes how you see the world. It shapes how the world responds to you because of how you respond. So it's a two-way thing.
And then, you mentioned about being in a psychiatric ward. Was that as an inpatient?
Yeah, I've been as an inpatient 4 times. Twice was due to my eating disorder. I was experiencing anorexia nervosa.
Yeah.
And the first 2 times the first one was query depression, query OCD, query eating disorder. It was right at the beginning of my relationship with the mental health service. I'd come home from university. I'd gone to see my doctor to register with my new GP. She said, I think you need to see our mental health team. I saw a psychiatrist. She went, you need to be in hospital and go home. There'll be a bed waiting for you in St. James's. And so I was in for 3 months. They felt at the time that the depression was the priority. So that's what there was a focus of. So it was about medication and that kind of thing there. Then I went on a day patient program for 6 months, going every day for this, that and the other. And then they started noting that my weight was going down. So they said, if your weight goes down anymore, we'll put you in hospital. And obviously that's not going to be an effective way to stop somebody losing weight. So my weight went down, so they put me in hospital.
But not on a drip?
Oh no, because it had only gone down a little bit. I'd only lost like half stone. But it was the threat, if you lose any more, you'll go in hospital. And it was while I was in there, because I felt like it was because I hadn't done as I was told that I was put in there. While I was in there, I saw the eating disorder service and they said, if you come under us, we'll get you discharged. So I didn't believe I had an eating disorder, but I heard that and they said they could get me discharged. So I said, oh, all right then. And I started seeing the eating disorder service, but it was purely because I could get out of hospital. I didn't see that I had an eating disorder.
Are you glad that you made that step?
In some respects, yes, and in some respects, no. I don't have regrets about everything. Things happened and you deal with them the best you can at the time.
Yeah.
And when I started seeing the eating disorder service, the focus became more on food diaries, weighed twice a week, So my weight got even lower and I became more focused on food. They stopped me from dying when I was 4 stone, but I believe that it was psychotherapy that has saved my life, because now I'm able to, I'm building a life and exploring, whereas the eating disorders, my initial time with the mental health service was just about stopping me from dying from an eating disorder. But it wasn't till I started having psychotherapy that it looked into everything else, and I think it's that saved
So it's
my
like,
life.
yeah, it's like effective aftercare.
I've done art therapy, I've done group therapy, I've done music therapy, I've done drama therapy, I've done, for that 10 years before psychotherapy, you name it, they've thrown it at me. Mindfulness, this, that and the other, CBT, everything. I think I've been through everything. And for me, it was just all about learning how to cope. And psychotherapy made the difference for me.
So again, it's that sort of typical thing of one size does not fit all. And it might work for some people, but not others.
Yeah.
And it can do more damage than good.
And I think people don't realise that teachers, nurses, doctors anybody really can make or break a person.
So in a way,
So they've got to be careful what they say and what they offer.
yeah, anything in anyone in authority, but maybe also having more than a one-pronged approach. You know, you can do this, or this would be a lot nicer way to deal with someone who is experiencing or has experienced trauma in the past this is the only path for you currently, unless you want to be on a 2-year waiting list.
I did a workshop on eating disorders for professionals last week. And it was, someone referred to it as training. I said, it's not training. I'm not training. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you this is what you do and you go out and do A, B and C. I'm having a discussion with you. I want to get started thinking. I want to start having conversations. We need to start talking about the stuff that's uncomfortable that we don't talk about. And that was the start of it. But it's definitely not training.
But the amount of money you could save.
I was going to say it's because it's resource intensive.
Yeah.
But it isn't, because it would have cost less to provide for the NHS to provide me with a psychologist for once a week for however long I needed it than all the inpatient programs all the crisis support that I've had, all the day patient programs that I've been on, and all the different departments. It would have cost less. But because it's seen as a longer term thing, you just think it's going to be so resource intensive. But actually, that would have been a cheaper option and better for my well-being. But that would have been cheaper than doing the crisis management stuff. Because I remember when I was discharged from the eating disorders, I still had issues with my eating. But it was like, well, we've given you sessions after you've been an inpatient. We've given you 6 sessions. You're discharged now. If you get ill again, you just get re-referred. And it was just like a cycle that you go around. Whereas there were no, we need to carry on working with to prevent you going backwards. And that kind of thing where I don't think there's, for me, that kind of work wasn't there. It was more of a crisis management thing. Well, actually you're 4 stone, you're going to die. Right, we'll deal with you now. Right, you're back up to a healthy weight now. Yeah, you still got issues, you still don't eat this, you still don't eat that, you're still petrified of food. And no doubt when we discharge you, you'll lose weight again, but we'll discharge you anyway because you're not life-threatening. So I think that crisis management and just looking at that is really quite unhelpful. Somebody who's suffering.
Because there's something in Leeds, yeah, I agree. And there is something in Leeds at the moment called the Leeds Recovery College, isn't there, that we're both aware of, and I've done a RAT course, but it didn't sit right with you.
I've done a couple of sessions on the Recovery College, both in Leeds and in Wakefield, and I just think that for me, when I was presenting, I felt that the way that because I was doing some on eating disorders, and I felt that I needed to be aware of what the impact it could have on the audience. So I didn't feel that it was right doing a workshop and just having professionals there, having parents and carers there, and having people who were with an eating disorder at that time there, I felt that workshops would be better targeted and bespoke to that group of people rather than putting them all in at once and just giving a general overview of eating disorders. Because I think sometimes by offering a little bit of help can be more dangerous than offering nothing. And I didn't want to be in that position. And obviously as well, I can't support somebody else who's having difficulties if I'm experiencing them. I can only go as far as I can go, because if I had the magic answers, I would be doing it myself. So I can't tell anybody else.
Thank you to our members for that discussion, and thank you all for listening to Visible Voices. Please join us again next time. Toodle pip. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you found Visible Voices interesting, thought-provoking and helpful. Visible Voices was created and delivered by the Visible Leadership Reference Group. Special thanks to all those that contributed today. Western Studios Leeds Limited for facilitating the podcast. The music was produced by Mark Parvin, aka Marvin Parks. To find out more about the Visible Project, go to visibleproject.org.uk. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. If the content of this has affected you and you live in Leeds, please go to the child abuse subsection of the Mindwell website, mindwell-leeds.org.uk.